The subject matter of this hearing is testament to the fact that the damage from poor decisions tends to compound in unexpected ways. While the historic crisis at our southwest border warrants primary focus, the disastrous consequences of the Biden-Mayorkas open border policy have spread to our once secure northern border as well. While the northern border has terraneous areas, other areas, unlike the southern border, offer suburban and easy access for illegal migrant crossings. And if we could on the monitor, I'd like to show a couple of pictures of the border at Derby, Vermont. This is within the Swanton sector. Can you go back to that first picture again? Yeah. So if you see the potted plants, that's actually the U.S.-Canadian border in that location. And then the second picture that you see, I don't know if you can make it out, but this is what would correspond to high security. They put some wooden sawhorses along with the potted plants. So it's not exactly, as you would say, a fortified border. And that last photo was the picture, if you leave it there for a moment, that same traffic circle is in the upper right-hand area of the picture, and then down below to the lower left, you can see where an arrow indicates the Customs and Border Patrol offices. They don't even have a direct line of sight to that area of the border. And so it happens that the influx of illegal aliens has multiplied rapidly in that area, is overwhelming Customs and Border Protection, local law enforcement, and local communities. The Biden administration's failed policies emboldened criminal organizations to exploit the northern border, smuggling people, including children, drugs, and weapons, over the northern border. Sadly, since just March 10th, the Swanton sector alone, that touches on New Hampshire, Vermont, and New York's northern borders, has seen 28 children, all under the age of 14, crossing the northern border in extremely cold and snowy conditions. Just last week, authorities busted 17 illegal aliens from Nicaragua and Guatemala in one stash house in Lisbon, Maine. 2 of them were previously removed from the country, and 4 previously crossed the southern border. Meanwhile, due to the crisis at the southwest border, Secretary Mayorkas surged resources away from other areas critical to Homeland Security, including the northern border. There are now fewer than 2,000 Border Patrol agents to cover the 3,145-mile land border, more than twice the size of the southwest border in terms of geography. In 2022, Secretary Mayorkas sent over 20% of the northern border workforce to help at the southwest border. Some remaining agents were tasked with remotely processing aliens in Texas. Now the administration is doing an about-face, recently detailing 25 additional officers to the overwhelmed northern border. Customs and Border Patrol morale is suffering. Agents work long hours in extreme conditions and are exposed to death, crime, and suffering. The northern border is experiencing a huge increase in illegal migrant encounters. In the Swanton sector alone, that same one I just mentioned, there has been over an 800% increase since the last fiscal year. So while the numbers are not as large in absolute terms, the growth is astonishing. Smugglers take advantage of aliens, leaving them in treacherous conditions. And just last year, an Indian family of 4, including 2 young children, were left to freeze to death at the northern border after being abandoned by a smuggler. The influx of illegal aliens also leaves the U.S. susceptible to terrorism and crime. In the last 6 months, Border Patrol apprehended an illegal alien listed in the terrorist screening data set between northern border ports of entry. At ports of entry, 176 individuals in the data set have been apprehended this fiscal year at the northern border. That figure compares to just 38 at the southern border. I say just, that's probably the wrong term to use. 38 in that terrorist screening data set at the southern border, but 176 individuals at ports of entry on that list on the northern border. The Biden administration admits that transnational criminal organizations take advantage of the northern border terrain to traffic drugs, weapons, and illicit proceeds over the border. The current crisis is giving those organizations the green light. Enough fentanyl came over the northern border in fiscal year 22 and 23 to kill 3.4 million Americans. Federal officials estimate that they are only seizing 5 to 10% of all drugs smuggled across the southwest border. With far less manpower, in the north over a much larger border, including much of these very rough, terraneous areas, it is daunting to imagine what narcotics are coming over the northern border that we do not specifically know about. Every state is a border state, and local communities, especially on the northern border, are struggling to keep up. Local police departments along the northern border lack the resources and equipment to effectively patrol their jurisdictions, especially without the help of CBP agents who were sent to the southern border. Local businesses cannot accommodate the groups of aliens that congregate in their lobbies looking for shelter and rides to their final destinations. These communities need reprieve. President Biden's open border policies and Secretary Mayorkas's refusal to enforce our nation's laws have jeopardized national security at the U.S.-Canada border and the operational readiness of Border Patrol agents. Just 2 weeks ago, in front of us in McAllen, Texas, wish some of our fellow folks on the other side of the aisle had been present, but the chief of the U.S. Border Patrol acknowledged in his testimony that we do not have operational control of the southern border, that the southern border in many places is not secure, and that it is the consequence of Biden administration policies that both those conditions obtain. Well, same problem in different ways is manifesting itself at the northern border. We will hold President Biden and Secretary Mayorkas accountable for this metastasizing crisis. I welcome our members and appreciate the important work we will do together. I also welcome and thank our guests for joining. Thank you all. I now recognize the ranking member of the